Well, hello everyone. Hope you can hear me. If somebody can just give me a heads up that you're hearing me okay in the comment section, that would be good. I see a lot of people there. I appreciate you all showing up. Let me share with everyone that uh, I'm a little new to this, as some of you know. And so, therefore, you may see me fumble around a little bit. If you can, just cut me a little slack there. Good. I see several of you say you can hear me, so that's good. That means at least it's working and getting out. You'll be putting up with my sniffles today. Went out and played golf this today and got back about an hour ago. And apparently, something there on the golf course really set my allergies off. To start off with, I appreciate everybody showing up. This started out as Kevin Rich, who's out there. He sent me a file, and Kevin said he's new to trying to do these multicolor epoxy inlays and wanted some insights on how I would approach this, as he wanted to do something for his friend. And I asked him if I could walk through it in a public forum, because several other people would probably be interested in that. And he said, sure, go ahead. So that's what we're doing here. This is a file that Kevin sent me about a week or two ago. I can't remember how long ago. And then I found it in my email and asked if he still wanted to look at it. And he said, sure, he would really like some help with it. So that's what I did, and decided that it might be something everybody could learn from. So that's the background on this file. Kevin sent me this picture, and he wanted to be able to go through it and figure out how he could set it up for carving multiple colors and pouring it. And so that's what we're going to do right now. And so you don't need to see my picture up here as I walk through it. So I'm going to turn my picture off, and we'll just look at the screen. And what you see here is you see, let me turn it on. Let me do something with layers here. So I pulled the layers out just so it'd be easier for me to see. I could have just pulled them down as a smaller one like that. That's probably better. Anyway, I pulled the layers so I can see what's going on at all times. And what you see on the screen right now is just a bitmap layer that I actually, if I right click, there you go, that I actually pulled off of a website. So Kevin originally, I asked him to send me an SVG, and Kevin sent me this SVG right here. And so that's a vector file. And the first thing I did was look at it in a couple different ways. One was I highlighted it, and I went to the drawing tab, and I turned on the nodes to see how many nodes, and there were quite a few nodes in there, as you can see, which makes the carving a little more challenging, but it can work fine. It's just, it wasn't quite as clean as I thought I'd like to see it. But more importantly, if I turn this off, let me try to blow the screen up here. If you see, several of the vectors are bleeding into each other right here. And so they weren't going to get the color separation from the background white that we wanted. And so you're going to have to go in there, and you're going to have to fix all those vectors also. And I find that the easiest way to do that, if you can do it, if you can find it and get close, something satisfactory, is to actually use text. So I decided that I would go try to figure out what font that was when I started to make modifications. So as I approach this, I could use a font that matched or was at least pretty similar. So I did a search, and the first thing I did was, let me pull this over on screen here. So in this search, the first thing I did was I went to see what the colors actually were on the University of Tennessee plaque. All right. And so you can see that they're white here. And in fact, what I did was I took that logo off the website, and I actually brought it in, and that's what you saw here was the website's actual logo. And you can see that what Kevin had matched up pretty well, actually. Maybe you can see that. See, this is the SVG. Let me turn off so you can see it matched up pretty well. So there wasn't a big issue there, but I was primarily looking at the colors to make sure I had the colors right. And also I wanted to look at what the fonts were. So I did a Google search, and on that Google search, what I saw was this picture here. And then I said, well, what are the fonts? What are the official fonts? So I did a Google search that just said, what are the fonts that are used on the University of Tennessee's medical school? And it came up with, here's the fonts and here's the colors. And when I went down here, it said the primary font was Gotham, and the secondary fonts, the ones that they use when there was a serif, which means a little thing on the end of it, is a Gaudy Old Style or Gaudy Old Style regular, bold and extra bold, and even italic. So I had that in my mind, and I went and I made sure that I actually had the Gaudy. I made sure I had the Gaudy Old Style font installed on this computer, and I'm not going to go through that now, but I had to go get it and install it. So once I had the Gaudy font, I knew I could move along. So let's talk about where I went from here. So the first thing I did was I said, well, if I want to do this kind of from scratch, I want to start figuring out what is going on and breaking everything into its individual pieces. So the first thing I did was I took Kevin's SVG at first, and I took and broke it into pieces. So I took the letters here that you see, text, and I moved them. And the way I would have done it was I selected them all. And I'm not going to try to save time. I know these things can get long if you take up too long. So you see what I'm doing here. I'm selecting the fonts, and I just go through and I select all of them. And then, and I'm not going to select them all right now, but you see what I'm doing. I selected all of the fonts, and I selected these two circles, and I right-clicked, and I said move to a new layer at the time. And the new layer that I made was this old text, so that I knew that all of the text was on one layer. And so now let me show you what that looks like. I'm going to turn off the Kevin Rich University here, and I put on old text. And see, I moved all of the text over to this layer so that when I'm breaking it into pieces to look at, I could think of it individually. And you can see this is the original text. You can see how it runs together still here. We're gonna get to this in a few minutes, but this is the original text. So I took the text from the SVG and I put it on a separate layer. The next thing I did was I took the circles and I wanted to put those on their own level. So you can see that here. I took all of these circles and I added them there. All right. So now the first thing I actually did, and let me do a node edit here so you can see all the nodes there. So I took them there and I tried to clean them up slightly. And there's two ways. Turn this off. There's two ways I approached the circles. One was where I just selected the circles and I did the same thing I did on the other one. I put move to layer, and at the time there wasn't a circle layer. So I typed in new layer, circle. And then I moved it to that circle layer, And the result was that we had the circles placed on this. Now, if I needed to clean up those circles more, if I wasn't happy with how they were going to carve, the other way I could have done it, and I'll show you real quickly here, is I could have taken the bitmap and I made sure that the bitmap was totally centered along with the rest of the vectors here. So let me select everything. And what I would have done, and what I did do, was I selected the alignment tool and I aligned them in the center. Oh, it moved on me again. So anyway, I aligned them in the center. I thought I had that already done before. And so then what I can do is I can take and I can make individual circles. Turn off this vector here. Off the bitmap simply by using the circle tool. If my circles weren't clear enough, put them in the middle and then bring them out like that. And I would make sure, let me make sure that I do this. I would have put a new layer and just say new circles. And then I would make each of these circles. So I would start with, let me close this and grab this circle and move this circle to the new circle there. Just so you see what I'm doing. And then I've accidentally got that one. We're going to delete that. And so now I'm making sure I'm on the new circle there as active. Then I would take and I would go ahead and take all these circles and make them the exact size of these other circles. So you can see what I'm doing. And because this isn't fully centered right now, somehow in manipulating this file, it got off center. It's not quite there in the middle like it should be. But we'll do that. And then I'll take and hold the shift key, which allows it to come out nice and even. And now you can see I've got that circle. And then I would start my next circle right here in the center. Hold my shift key and come out to that area. And work so forth, and I would work my way out there. So that's what I would have done. Excuse my runny nose. So with that said, you can see how I would have built those circles. So now, so we don't get things confused, I'm going to go ahead and take this circles right here, and I'm going to delete this layer. But that's how I would have built the circles layer if I didn't think they were clean enough. So delete. I don't want to keep the data. Okay. So now let's go back to what I have set up that I sent to Kevin. So now what you can see is I've got a bitmap layer, the SVG layer. I have the old text. So I took the text and separated it. Then I took the circles and I separated those. And because this top of this mug, let me put that back up there, because the top of the mug is intersecting with the circle, I decided to go ahead and keep that together. That's why you see that. So the next thing I did was I said, now when I go to try to create this text right here, using the text that I've separated out, it's going to have to be on a curve. And so to do that, what I did was I created a circle guidance vectors. So if you don't know how to, let me close this over here. If you don't know how to put vectors, text on a circle, I can do a real quick demo here in a second. But the way you do it is you have to have the text, and then you have to have the vector that the text is actually going to go on. So I created this layer so that I could put those in, and then I lined up the circles with the original length of each of the texts And the other thing that I did was I wanted to make sure it was as close in the center as I can. So the way I made that circle, and I'm going to make that circle guideline the active layer for just a second. So the way I made that circle was I first measured what the distance was between this vector and this vector. And so I wanted to measure that. Let me blow this up so I can get it a little better. So from this vector to, let me do snapping up here. So I measured the vector from here to here, and I saw that it was about 1.3 inches, give or take, 1.298 inches there. So 1.3, I think, is what I used, something close to that. And so I knew the center between those two was going to be half of that distance. So when I created the circle, what I did was I went to the center. Actually, that's not what I did. Let me take that back. Command, take the Z out. What I did was I took this circle here and I offset it using the offset tool outwards. And I did the math here. I said 1.3 or thereabouts times 0.5 equals. And I hit offset, and that created that circle, as you can see. And again, it's off center right now. Somehow the whole model got moved off center, so I don't want to play with it right now and mess things up in the middle of me trying to demo. But you get the idea, I believe. And so let me grab this, hit close, and move this over just so it looks a little different. Okay, so now you see the circle. And the next thing I did was I broke this circle. I went into node edit mode, and I broke this circle where the old text was. So I hit cut vector here, and then I hit cut vector over here. And now I have two separate vectors. Then the other thing I did was I wanted the text to be where it was. So I basically hit cut right here. I hit cut vector here, and I hit cut vector here. And now I can actually delete this. It's easier if I don't have them vector mode. I can delete this, delete. Because I'm using a Mac, my delete key won't delete. I have to use the menu or a different Mac. So now you see I have the two vectors that I can use to form my curve. So I'm going to get rid of those right now so they don't confuse us. So that's how I got the two curve vectors. And now I'm set up. Now that I've got all of that set up, I'm now set up to go ahead and trying to move this out of the way a little bit. I'm now set up to start dealing with my text. So remember I had my old text. I'm going to take this off for a second. I had my old text, and so the new text, I want to say the same thing. So what I did was I took a text tool in a box originally, and the only reason I did it in a box is because I wanted to get a height of about 0.65. I had measured the height of these letters using that height tool. And I said this was about 10 inches or so. And the way I did that was I simply used, I'll show you in a second here, hit close, and then I wanted the university caps lock, the university space OF space Tennessee. Now you're saying, why did you do that? Where's of? Well, I'm going to have to put two different text in here. One's going to be an italics and one's going to be a regular or a bold. And so I've got gold old style text here. I'm going to put bold. I want it centered. And so then I'm feeling good about where that is right now. I hit close. I was trying to move those layers so they wouldn't be in the way. And now I've got this text right here, and I'm just going to move it up here for a second. And so let me take off the old text for a second. And I'm going to put a add new layer here, new text, just so you can see how I did the text. Should have undone the caps, but we're going to go with this. So that's the active layer. So now what I'm going to do, move this to the active layer. And so this is the active layer, and I want to put this on this circle right here. That's the text on a curve. So I select the text. The next thing I do is select the text on a curve. I'm going to select the curve, which is this curve right here. I want it to maintain the text size up and down. And then I want it on the curve, not above the curve. And then I want to check how well now this matches up against the original text. So I turn on the old text. That's why I had it. And you can see that the old text, here's the old text in black, and here's the new text right here in this purple color. So what I want to do to try to match them is to separate the text spacing a little bit. And you can see I'm just moving a little bit at a time. Until I'm happy with how it looks. And I've reached the end of the span. I may need to make the circle just a little bit more. And so now I had to play with that a little bit until I got the text to match as close as I wanted. All right. And so once I did that, I hit close. Then I go ahead and I take off the old text for a second. And there is the new text. And then what I did was I took the text tool here, click off this. This is a new text. And I hit OF, which is small, and I used italics. And I tried to use about the same height, 0.625, I think it was, or close. And you now see I've got the text here. And what I did was, and this is on the new text, and what I did was I simply took that text let me change this color. I took that text and I placed that in there, and I tried to line it up with the old text. All right. So I worked on trying to line that up as best I could by playing with it. And I'm not going to take all night of your time, but that's the thought process. That's what I went through. And so when I was done, you can see it gets pretty close to that original old text. If I put up the Kevin SVG, it's not far off from that. But more importantly, if I go to the official website, you can see that that text is now in a text font versus an SVG. And therefore, I was able to now place all of that on the font there. So I'm going to turn this off for a second. I've explained how I did that. Hopefully everybody was following. And now let me turn off this guidance. And here's the end result. So I did the University of Tennessee. And it was really the University of Tennessee with some spaces here on one text line. Then I did the of. Then I did the college pharmacy on the other line down below. That's what that lower vector was. And I did the same thing with the of. And then you can see where I actually made two independent circles. And again, the reason this isn't lining up completely is because somehow in me fiddling with the file, this didn't get all centered. And I don't want to mess with that right at the moment. So I've gotten all of that done, and I've got the text in here. And I've got the circles in here. And then the next thing I needed to do was get the mug. So this is the mug right here. Now, the top of the mug is part of the circles. And here's the mug that I needed. And the other thing I needed to do was get the UT. So there's the UT. So what I did was, to get those, was I did the same thing I did before. I went back to the original vector, and I copied the mug, and I moved that to its own vector here, its own layer, mug. I copied the UT, and I moved that to its own layer. And then what I did was I went through and used the vector preview and cleaned those up where I felt like I needed to. So now when we're all said and done, let me turn this off. I've got the old text. I've got the circles. I've got, well, let me turn off the old text. I've got the circles. I've got the new text, which are actually vector, are text vectors. You'll see that they're no longer running together. They're matching the school style. So they're actually matching the school style. I've got the mug. I've got the UT. So now you can see I've got all of the vectors separated. And then I'll add the bitmap layer to match up with the original carving that Kevin wants to do. So now I've got all the vectors. So this is how I think about it. So I'm going to take off the bitmap layer because I'm going to say this matches as close as I want it to right at the moment. And so if I've got all the vectors, what's the next thing I need to do? Well, the next thing I need to do is I want to come back over and bring this back over here. And I can get that with the bitmap. But I want to match these colors now. So in this epoxy layer, there's going to be a white and a black, and that's what Kevin said he wanted. So we're going to have this picture when we're done. And I validated against the website. The other way to do it, of course, is, as I showed you a second ago, is we could just go on this and know that's what we want. So that's what I do next. The next thing I do is say, which vectors go with which color. So as we saw, and I'm going to do this temporarily to make it easier to see. I'm going to move this over here for a second. And so now if I go to all the vectors, don't need the guidance, I start saying, what are my colors? Well, my first color is going to be black. So I need to separate all the black colors. So what I did was I took the text and I took the mug and the circles and I put those on what I call the black layer. So let me go through here and take these off. And this is my black layer. Everything that's on this layer, when we set up the toolpath, is going to be carved when I want to pour my black pour. So that's the first thing I did. And I looked at this and I matched up. And you might initially look at it and say, wait a second, Rob, the UT and the 1898 are not black. They're white. Why do you have that on the black layer? Well, that's because when we do the vCarving, the black is going to have to be in the mug. And if I don't put the UT 1898 in the black layer, what will happen when I carve the black layer is everything will be carved black. And so those are actually a black layer separation. So then the next thing I did was I took everything that needed to be white. Well, when I'm carving this badge or logo, my plan is that I will make the white pour, the first pour, after I do clear or color. I should say clear. So the next thing I needed to do was separate out the white. So I looked here and everything's going to be white. So I simply took the circles, and what I did was say, everything's going to be white. And so I created a layer called white, and you'll see it's blue. And so I took the outer layer. You see this black? I took the black layer. I took the black layer, and remember the concept of overlap? The white I made just inside the black layer. So I took this circle and I did an offset inwards of, I think it was 0.03. I used 0.03 or 0.02. I want to make that normally on the white layer active. So I'm going to do that on the active layer and we'll see how close I get. Hit offset. And now, yeah, that's what it was, 0.03. You see how it just lined up on that layer? So hit Command Z or hit Control Z to undo that. And you can see that the white is just inside the black. Okay? Hopefully that it became real obvious. So that's why what I did with the white layer. So now the plan will be to go ahead and pour the white first. Everything will be white, and then we'll come in and pour the black. So you're all saying, okay, what about the clear layer? What's going on with the clear layer? With the clear layer, remember, needs to be just outside the black. So let me open up the clear layer, open up the black layer. Let's try to do that again in slow motion. So this is the clear layer, and this is the black layer. Did everybody see that? So this is black. It's got kind of a purplish color. You don't know how well that shows on the screen. And this black is the clear layer. And that is, again, 0.03 offset from that black layer. So now everything in here, if you do it the Shane Peters way, is going to be poured clear solid. And that's how this project is set up right now. Everything's going to be poured clear solid. And then all the rest of this will be carved into the clear layer. Now, my newest methodology, I wanted to show the original methodology, would be slightly different. My newest methodology would say, I'm going to take the clear layer, that outer layer right now, and I'm going to make that the active layer. And I would actually input that about 0.26, only because when I did 0.25, my 1/4-inch bit wouldn't fit in there. And I would offset that inward. And now you can see that my clear layer right here is about a 1/4 inch, just slightly more so that my bit will fit in there. And when I carve my clear layer, it's going to actually just go on the bounds where it could touch the other wood. That way I'm not using as much epoxy for my clear, but I've still got a nice boundary so that the black will not bleed into the surrounding wood. All right. So anyway, that's what the thought process was as I went through this. And then from there, I go ahead and I set up the tool path. And I would start with the clear tool path first. And I didn't put a clear tool path in here yet because I wanted to demonstrate it. So I take the clear and I'm going to go to a vCarve tool path. And let me put that as 0.00, start with 0. And normally I would put 0.15 here. But for demonstration purposes, so you can see what this is going to look like when we're done, I'm going to put 0.05. I'm going to hit clear here. And I'm going to put I'm just going to leave this 1/8, but I would put a 1/4 inch bit there. I am trying to be conscious of your time. Hit calculate. Let me hit this as a color of yellow, let's say. And hit preview. So that's where the clear epoxy is going to go. So the next one we said was, and so I would take these if I was setting up the file. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to pour the white, which is the next thing that we want to do. So I'm going to open up the white toolpath here. I'm going to start at 0.05. Remember, this is normally I'd be starting at 0. I'm just doing this for preview purposes, and I'm going to go another 0.05. I would be using a 1/4 inch. Let me remove this and go ahead and pick a 1/4 inch end mill here. And it doesn't matter which one I pick here. I would normally pick a down cut. This is a compression, but I'm just showing you the demo. So normally pick an appropriate 1/4 inch, and I would normally use a down cut on this one. And I'm going to calculate that. Oh, I forgot. The reason I put them all in vectors is I want to select the white, which means I've got to turn it off, hit me close, select it. And I should have done that on the clear. I should have shown you that. Hit associate, hit white, hit close, hit calculate. And now you can see that I'm going to preview visible. And you can see that the white is going to go all the way out into the black. Then the next thing I want to do is take the black toolpath. I need to turn that on. And I'm going to calculate that by going to 0.1, only because that's where we're sitting at with depth. All I'm trying to do is make it so you can see it. In reality, these are all going to be start depth of 0 and 0.125, except the first clear layer, which will be 0.15. So I'm going to select this, remove this. I'm going to select a 1/4 inch. Select, calculate. Got to select the vectors. Black, close. This is black. Calculate. So now you can see this is our tool path for the black. Oh, that's why I left that at 1/8 actually. This should be a 1/8 inch end mill. So now that I've got all of that selected, I can go ahead and let me check that one. Yep, there we go. Preview that. Got to turn this to black. And so that's how this thing is going to carve. The next thing you need to do, by the way, on this one here, let's go back over here. I should have selected in this area the clear layer. Calculate. Now that's not going to change anything because that's what I should have done to begin with. So that's how I go through laying this out. Now, once I've got all that laid out, then I go back through here and I'm going to change each of these to 0. And this will be 0.15. Calculate. And then I would save it. This would be 0. And this probably I would, depending on my mood, I would probably make 0.13 to give me a little more surfacing area. Hit calculate. And then the black, I would go in and start at 0 and make this 0.13. Calculate. And now I have all the right toolpaths and I can save them. But if I tried to hit preview now, you'll see what would happen. Preview all toolpaths. You won't ever see the black because it's not deep enough. One other thing I should point out is that if you look, let me turn all these off. Now let me open up the black. This is the black, and that's in this purple. Now I'm going to turn on the white in blue. What I wanted to point out is you can see, hopefully you can see, this is the black. And you can see the white actually overlaps the black. So the white is going not far enough to go out to the clear, but just inside the black and overlapping this vector. And that's the overlap part that you've heard Shane and I talk about, is that's that overlap. So that's basically it relative to how I thought through this thing and I set up these sets of vectors. And hopefully I didn't go too fast or didn't stutter too much, but hopefully that's clear to everybody about how you think through it. The steps are: number one, number one is to first break down the vectors into the separate points that you're going to need to emphasize and pour colors for. Then number two, go ahead and separate those into color layers so that you can carve them. And when you separate into color layers, you want to make sure that you're having the correct overlap. You want to make sure you're having the correct overlap in each of the areas. So with that, I'll open this up to questions about this thought process in case I didn't make something clear, or any other topic of interest for the next 15 minutes. I'll respect your time and keep this to an hour. So I'll open it up, and if you have a question, let me know, and I'll look here in the comments to see what's coming up. Any questions? If everybody's clear, just have a couple people give me a thumbs up or say everything's good. I see Jim Matthews, out of curiosity. Finish it up, Jim. Did I miss the first part of the question, Jim? Realize there is a 30-second delay, so I may see it just a little bit after you write it. Would it be an issue if you left the text running together? Well, that depends on what you want to accomplish. In the original bitmap layer, let me see if I can move this over here. They look close to running together. And so if you wanted to leave it running together, that would not be a problem as long as everything was closed. So that would be a personal preference on how you wanted this thing to look when you were done. So yes, you could leave it running together as long as it's closed. Any other questions? I'm hoping you guys found this information of value. I struggle with trying to figure out what's too simple, what's not too simple, what should I put out, because I don't want to waste anybody's times. And so if you have other things you think would be good for me to do lives on, I'm glad to do those. I'm learning how to use this YouTube platform to help other people. And so if you have other things that you would like me to cover, I'm always willing, excuse me, I'm always willing to find some time to do that, but I don't want to waste people's times. And hopefully you were able to get a couple tips and tricks out of this. And the same thing with my YouTube channel. If there are things you would like to see me put information out on, please feel free to leave comments or put it in the community section and let me know. So actually, Rich, I did not use end mills in the letters. Let me open that up. It could be confusing. So I'm going to, let me reduce this. The letters are black, remember? And so if you look at the letters, I'm using a vCarve toolpath, Rich, and then you can see as part of the vCarve toolpath, I want a clearance tool. So the first tool that I'm using in the vCarve toolpath is normally in the past, that would have been a 15-degree V-bit. That's what I would have normally used. And a 15-degree V-bit will work just perfect. But I've switched recently to that Amana 0.5 millimeter tip tapered ball nose. And so if you look here, hopefully you can see that on your screen, that if I open it up, I'm actually using an Amana 46473 V-bit, 12.4 degree angle, 6 millimeter that I bought, especially for wood inlays and for epoxy inlays. So I'm actually using the primary tool so that I get the sharp corners and everything else is that tapered ball nose, or you could use a V-bit. And whatever V-bit you want to use, whether it's 15 degree or 30 degrees, whatever gets you the results you want, you could use. The end mills you see me using, that is only for the clearance of the bigger areas here and here, so that we don't have to use that small tip to make the carbon go faster. Dan, you basically said, do you clear the whole process pocket or just a 1 inch? When you're talking about the clear, do you clear the whole pocket or just a 1 inch? I think you're talking about the clearance pour, the clear pour. And so in my situation, in this case, let me come over here. You can see that in the past, so you've been in lessons before, if Shane was talking or I was talking in the past, we would clear this whole pocket. And recently, as of my Memorial Day flag pour, I started experimenting. And for these days, I am now only carving a 1/4 inch from the outermost mortar. And so now when I carve a 1/4 inch, that's what I was trying to show over here. Let's do the preview all. Let's do the clear first. You can see that I'm only got a 1/4 inch, the outside 1/4 inch. Let's reset the preview. You can see I've only carved in a little over a 1/4 inch, whatever would fit my 1/4 inch end mill to make it clear easy so it goes fast. And I'm using my tapered ball nose on the edge. And then I pour that clear now instead of the whole thing. Is that what you were talking about, Dan? Dan, did that answer your question? All right, good. Anybody else have any other questions on this topic or anything else you're wondering about what I've put out videos on lately? So if everybody's good and you've got enough of me, do me a favor and give me a thumbs up if you think I deserve it. Leave a comment afterwards. If you think you got something out of this video, as you all know, I'm trying to build up my YouTube channel. It's not going too quickly. I've got to figure out how to provide as much value as I can to all of you so that you feel good about it. And if you think you're done, when we're all done, when people think they're done, go ahead and give me a thumbs up in the or whatever. Let me know in the comments section. I do see Jim ask, do you ever seal a larger epoxy project with penetrating epoxy to prevent bleed through? I will seal a larger epoxy projects. I don't normally use penetrating epoxy, although I played with the idea. I actually would use tabletop and let it sit and soak in. But I have considered using penetrating epoxy, but I haven't done an epoxy project where I've required it to use penetrating epoxy. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Dan. Any other questions? I am wondering how many people are interested in the project videos when I do those, things like that mortise and other CNC or project videos. Is that something you guys appreciate getting put out? Or the simple tips and tricks from Vectric? I'll put something out in the community for a poll to see what you guys want. Okay, good. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Kurt, Kevin. All right, good. Got enough positive response that I'll keep doing that. I'm I'm gonna try to put out some laser videos, but I'm having so much fun with my CNC and laser. It's hard to decide which one do I put out. And I know most of my guys are CNC guys and gals, and so I tend to favor the CNC stuff right now. But there's a lot of cool stuff going on with my laser too. Having too much fun, I guess. All right, if you've all think you've gotten enough and I don't have any more questions, I'll go ahead and call this a wrap. We've been on almost an hour, and hopefully you found it valuable. And if you did, like I said, give me a thumbs up and leave a comment on what you thought was what you liked best. With that, have a good evening. I'll respect your time. And okay, Kevin, you got an X tool? All right. Uh, I'll respect your time and I'll sign off for now. And again, thank you for taking some of your busy time to come in and participate. It's appreciated. And I'll continue to try to put these things out. Have a great day until we meet again in this meeting. By the way, if any of you are going to AWFS in Las Vegas, let me know, drop me an email, and that way we can meet in person. Ronald, cool. Is this going to be watched later? It will be on my channel in the live section. I am recording it. So I think it goes up like right away. I'll have to check. I'm not as good at Mark at trying to go check all of the closed captions and making sure they're all right. So there might be a couple blurbs or things where I didn't say words quite right, so the closed caption isn't completely accurate, but it's supposed to happen all automatically. So yes, it should be. I'm also hoping that the comments section, the live chat replay, comes up. I had a problem with that before. I think I've got that fixed. So if anybody has a problem with seeing this recorded live, if they try, please let me know so I can address it and take care of it in the future. All right. Thank you very much. And let me know if you have a problem with the replay. I'm signing off.